Good news, everyone! The government-funded media agency brings on government-funded think tank employees to tell us that the government is doing a great job with the carbon tax. Not only is it working, it's making Canadians richer because the government is doing a great job. Let's dive into today's video because it is incredibly frustrating, especially later on some of the things that they say. Hearing some of the things that they're trying to trick Canadians with about the carbon tax. I was trying to get through this video when I watched it the first time without punching the air. Let's dive into it because there is so many things that are considered maybe myths, truths, or at the very least mistakes that we can get into in this video. So let's dive in.
This carbon tax has got to go, and I'm going to explain why.
The carbon tax isn't the issue. The issue is competition.
If they collect a little bit more tax than us Canadians and make us all broke, we're going to be able to save the planet from burning up.
There's a lot of talk about the carbon tax right now, and between the political jabs and social media rants, it can be hard to get a handle on what this really means for you. Like, how much are you really paying? Can you get more money back? And is it even really helping the environment? Let's get into it. First up, not everyone pays the federal carbon tax and not everyone gets rebates. British Columbia, the three territories, and Quebec do have some form of carbon pricing. But if you live there, you don't get the federal rebate. If you live in the rest of Canada, you pay the federal carbon tax and you get a federal rebate.
Rebate means, generally speaking, something's been paid up front. Hopefully, it goes back into your pockets. Let's do some math and see what they're going to say about these rebates and see if it, offsets our costs actually.
Businesses also pay the carbon tax. Big companies with big emissions may...
Very specific language there. Businesses pay the carbon tax. No, businesses are charged a carbon tax. The consumers pay the carbon tax. That's the big thing. It's like in construction. Yeah, the construction guys pay for the materials, but they're really just charged for it. They mark it up, they sell it to the end of the consumer. So who's paying it?
May fall under a separate industrial carbon pricing system. Canada has had a national price on greenhouse gas emissions since 2019, and it goes up every year. It started at $20 per ton. On April 1st, it will reach $80, and it's slated to increase
nothing like a 400% increase on taxes.
$15 a year until 2030, added to fuels that emit CO2 and other greenhouse gases when burned.
Carbon pricing in Canada is a key pillar of our emissions reduction strategy.
This is Sarah Hastings-Simon. She's a professor at the University of Calgary. She studies how carbon pricing and other energy transitions can help Canada achieve its climate goals. The thinking behind carbon pricing, she says, is this.
Is that by putting a price on carbon emissions, on greenhouse gas emissions, we make it more expensive to emit, more expensive to create more carbon, and therefore we make it lower cost to use alternatives that create less carbon emissions.
Not everyone can afford to go green, so let's do the math on what the rising price means.
Not everyone can afford to go green, and they also showed a Tesla, which, we know electric vehicles struggle in a climate like Canada. Same with some of the other electric alternatives we have to gas, like some of those heat pumps and some of those other things. Like, Canada is just a super cold country. We have a lot of issues that they're not factoring in with the battery powered operations and some of these other things that we need. It's, it's crazy.
At the pump on April 1st, you'll pay about 3 cents extra per liter. That's on top of the carbon tax you already are paying. For the average driver, your total carbon tax bill for a full tank of gas will be from $8 to $11. But as the carbon tax rises, so do rebates.
Okay, so I just did some quick math while he was talking there. I took 8 plus 11, divided it by 2 just to get an average number. So if we times that by 52, it was 9.5, but if we times that by 52 weeks, it's $494 the average person usually goes through if you're commuting to work or something like that. Probably around a tank of gas a week, excuse me. So if you're using a tank of gas per week, that's $494 a year just in carbon taxes that you're directly paying. not including what you're getting charged, which I was referencing earlier, that you're directly paying $494. Let's get into some of these rebates and see how that works out.
Also, as part of carbon pricing is what's done with the money that's collected. All of that money, when it comes to federal carbon pricing, is returned to individuals and families within the province that it's collected from.
All of that money? I'd like to know if all of that money is being actually returned, because it seems unlikely.
Maybe the most confusing thing about the carbon tax is the money some get back. Do you know whether or not you got the carbon tax rebate?
I believe I did, but I'm not sure.
Do you have questions about the carbon tax? Like, do you understand it fully?
I'm not sure about it right now.
You're a resident of Ontario, right? Yeah, so you live here in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And you're not sure if you got the rebate?
No.
Those rebates are now called the Canada Carbon Rebate. The term rebate is a bit misleading because you get the money up front before paying the carbon tax. This is the government's attempt to make sure low-income earners are not out of pocket. How much you receive depends on your family size and where you live. For example, a family of 4 in Alberta receives $450 every 3 months. Rural residents could soon receive a 20% top-up. That's because they tend to drive more and use more energy than people who live in a city. The question some have, do you pay more than you get back?
I did my own calculations. I pay about half of what I get back in the rebate.
So you're making money.
Yeah, so for me...
That's Andrew Leach, an economics professor at the University of Alberta. He wrote about his family's rebate on his Substack. Turns out he's making a profit. What about others?
Profit is hilarious because they're doing the math based on, oh, how much am I spending directly at the pump? So we got 386 here, and it's like, okay, we know that on just gasoline, the average household's going to be paying $494 a year on just gasoline. That's not anything else, heating your home. And then again, what we're paying in increased cost is the crazy thing. Like all of these businesses with their trucking, their shipping, their production, when it comes to the actual creation of the packaging, every single thing is going toward, like they're getting charged carbon tax on that, and it's marked up because their packaging's more expensive. So then that's marked up, and then their shipping and everything. And it's like that carbon tax is being marked up multiple times before it even gets to us, and then the products are more expensive, which means more inflation. But inflation is, going towards the carbon tax. Like this is something that can be changed immediately. It's crazy. But okay, let's hear what this guy who, if I had to guess, I'm making a lot of assumptions here. He's got his bike in the background there. He's in his little room. He's a university professor. My guess is, oh, well, I have a 1-bedroom condo and I hardly spend any money on the carbon tax. I'm making money. Yeah, well, what if you have a family of 5, a family of 6? Your only option is to drive a minivan. Your kids play sports, you have family in another city, these opportunities are very easy. If you're a single guy who rides a bike in the city, it's like, that's fine, sure. But like, that's just not realistic for families. And what we need, families, we need kids. You're really discouraging that with these types of moves. And it's just,
We get back more money in the form of rebates than we pay in the form of a carbon tax.
If you're driving a high emissions vehicle, driving more than the average Canadian, living in a larger than average house, traveling more than average, then you're in those groups that are not getting as much back as they're paying.
What's average?
To better understand the original analysis, let's bring in Parliamentary Budget Officer Yves Giroux.
The independent budget watchdog also looked at this. He told CBC's Power and Politics the rich tend to lose money with the carbon tax. Lower and middle income families make money.
What's rich? What's lower in income, like middle income? Like you use this phrasing, and the problem is like what the government views as one thing and what, a think tank views. It's like, is that rich? Because we know that inflation's getting, bad. What's considered rich now? I don't know.
If you take into consideration the carbon tax that households pay on their fossil fuels that they're buying, gasoline, natural gas, diesel, so they pay that directly, and they subtract from that the rebate, then about 80% of households are better off.
Okay, again, that's just what you've paid directly, which means money you've been charged as a person carbon tax dollars. Nothing else that you're being charged from other companies, industries, or any associated costs. Just your one-to-one dollar match. Supposedly, you're making money.
That's one way of looking at it. Examine the broader impact on the economy and a different view emerges. A negative one, according to the parliamentary budget officer. His economic analysis shows the carbon tax reduces jobs and revenues from the transport and oil and gas sectors.
Lower employment, lower profits, lower dividends for those who own stocks.
Meaning, workers in the oil patch could lose their jobs, and Canadians who hold shares in oil companies like Suncor or Cenovus could see lower investment returns. So is the carbon tax...
Okay, when I first watched this, I thought they were going to bring up my point that like the companies are just passing on these costs to the consumer, but they're saying the opposite. They're saying, oh no, don't worry. It's like the economy's just not going to do as well because these companies are going to make less profit because they have to pay the carbon tax and they're going to lay people off and do all this. No, the costs get just passed on to the other people as well, discouraging us, you know, accessing the natural resources and these fossil fuels that the world uses. No, let's just let Russia produce it all. We can give it all to them. You know, Canada doesn't need to produce anything. We can just keep bringing in immigrants, taking their money, and that'll keep helping us grow. Because if you just take enough money from immigrants, we can keep charging the carbon tax. Like, I thought that's hilarious, like, to not bring up, oh, no, we're an independent think tank. He said it's independent, so he's supposedly not government. But yet he doesn't bring up the fact that all of these companies are clearly charging extra to make up for the carbon tax that they're being charged.
Even working? The answer is complex. Is carbon pricing working to reduce emissions?
You know, it's a tricky question in terms of it's very hard in a causal way to say I'm going to point to, you know, this specific thing that happened and it happened because of carbon pricing.
Environment.
So her answer, the best, you know, government implemented you know, situation is one that they can say, well, there's no way to tell if it actually works, but we think it's doing the right thing.
Climate Change Canada says its modeling does show that our emissions would be higher without carbon pricing. And we also know that there is a cost to...
Why did they word it like that? Our emissions would be higher instead of our emissions have been lowered.
Not acting on climate change, which the science says means more deadly heat domes, more intense wildfires, and floods.
Oh, you mean the wildfires that were proven to be arson this past couple of years? You know, the wildfires that could easily be beaten by more active forest management, controlled burns, all that stuff. So yeah, that's the end of the video, guys. It was so frustrating to hear them say these things. But again, this is government-funded media with government-funded think tanks talking about the carbon tax. So hopefully you understand a little bit more about what's happening, how they're sort of misleading you on what you're actually being charged, what the costs are back to you in your pocket. Don't forget, I am a real estate agent in London, Ontario. If you do want a referral across my real estate network across all of Canada, reach out to me. I can get you in touch with one of my hand-picked agents in the link below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and have a great rest of your day.